welcome our panellists to the stage. Coming up, ladies, and I'm going to invite you please to sit in the order of your photos so that everybody knows who you are, because I tell you what, we have got a stellar panel. As they come up, I'm going to introduce them to you. So we have Varalakshmi Venkatraman, who is the Head of Data Engineering at Funding Circle, Sarah Painter, who's a VP of Customer Experience at Merkle UK, Flavilla Fongang, who is a serial entrepreneur, author and founder of 3 Colors, who I should also mention is an award winner tonight. Congratulations. I should just go look at that. Look, she's actually practicing her walk-on for this evening. There you go. I've just thought you're winning an award tonight. Love that. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And Wincie Wong, who's the Head of Services Workforce Technical Capability at NatWest. So, look, really looking forward to this discussion because this is not about traditional pathways. We're lived experience of how your career journeys have gone. And I think really the most sensible thing is to ask each of you, if you would, to kind of just give us a little insight into your pathways of difference, let's call it that, and that has what journeys have you taken that have led to your successes where you are right now, and whether that's either changing industry, stepping sideways, starting again in roles where you've had minimal experience, or taking a chance on something completely different. Wincie, can I come to you first? Share a story.
Yes. Hi, everyone. So I work at NatWest. Just to repeat what the previous speaker said, if anyone offers you a role in technology at NatWest, please take it. That's probably what I would say, just to kick off. First of all, I was born and raised in New York. I'm a child of non-English speaking parents. So we were, let me be not so politically correct, we were poor. We were pretty poor. My mother was a garment worker. My father kept trying to start businesses that all kept failing. But I was lucky enough that my mother understood that computers, she said, would take over the world. I started, she put me in computer classes. I started coding from a very young age. And despite all of that, and luckily, because of that, I was able to get into top math and science high school in New York and educate myself out of poverty. Now, when I had a choice to decide what I would study, I did what, although I loved computers, really wanted to go into it, really was passionate about it, I did what people do when they're poor and they really, really want to not be poor anymore. And I heard that accountants, you know, they're never poor. They count people's money, so that can't be a bad thing. So that's why I ended up studying. I didn't have any role models. I went to accountancy, became a finance director, met a French man in a bar, ended up in London with NatWest. Here at NatWest, I started as a finance director, looking after large books, 50 billion plus, doing all these things. And I just felt inside there was that need that was calling, you know, that I still wanted to get back to something different. I was lucky enough, I got mentored, I got help, support, ended up working in digital. Back when the team, there were only 20 people there in our retail digital space. Watched it grow from 20 to 300, ran digital teams, started running innovation teams, was asked by our CEO to run something called the Rose Review as well. That was another change in my career all of a sudden. As an American who knew nothing about British politics or government, was thrown into Westminster and had to effect some changes in policy, which I'm glad to say have been very successful and now been adopted by the World Bank as well. And moving on from that, I'm now running what I'm really passionate about, which is how do I get more people from diverse backgrounds into tech. And I am very lucky that NatWest has given me the license to do exactly that in my job. And along the way, I set up small businesses, food businesses, flower design, all kinds of things. I've also set up a charity. Many of the other founders who are in the room with us, there were 18 of us, who started the Tech She Can charter. So if you haven't seen the stand, please visit them, which is my way of going back and giving back, finding those girls who were just like me, who had the capacity, had the knowledge, had the smarts, but just didn't have that role model to tell them the possibilities that actually there was a role, and actually it's the highest paying job in all of the UK and the most sought after, so why wouldn't you go after tech? And letting them know that actually you can be passionate about climate, about fashion, about like animals, about whatever it is, and use tech as your way of changing that or improving that or putting your stamp in the world and leaving that legacy. So I'm really happy to say that, you know, that's what we're doing now. We're taking people from different backgrounds, all our apprentices. We work with a charity, bring people from socioeconomic backgrounds, train them up to become software engineers, digital marketers, all kinds of jobs. We do the same with partnership with Co-First Girls to bring women and give them jobs. And I think that's really important. You know, sponsorship, allyship is really important, but actually, I will never forget those people in my life and in my career who actually pointed to me and said, you know, you need to be doing this, and I'm going to give you a job to actually do what you're meant to do.
Amazing. Thank you very much for sharing your career journey. And there's so much of what we've heard today that kind of resonates with that in terms of, as you said, allyship and sponsorship, but also, you know, kind of passion, vision, values, and then paying it forward and really getting involved. Thank you so much. That's why these stories really, really matter. And Flavilla, can I come to you next, actually?
Yes.
I'd love to hear your career journey.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because I was listening to what you just said, and when I came, so as you can hear from my accent, I'm not from England. I am French born, and when I tried to open a bank account, Barclays refused me, HSBC refused me, and I had money, so I was confused, and the only bank that offered me an account was NatWest. And since that time, and we don't know each other, right? Since that time, like, you know, I'm going to
I
stay.
didn't plan this story.
Yeah, I didn't see this panel going in this direction,
I
actually.
stayed with NatWest, anyways, and so I'm giving you a favor, so stay with NatWest.
Yes, yes.
So yes, so it's interesting because when you talk about stories, and I always think about life is an adventure. I don't want to know the end of the story, but I just want to make sure that I have fun. So when I first came, you know, 20 years ago to this country, I didn't speak a word of English. And I left just because I wanted to live an adventure. It was meant to be for a year, do an exchange program, and one thing led to another. And I've stayed here. And you know, I always laugh, people always laugh when I tell their stories, but I think what really motivated me to stay in London is when I first switched on the TV and I watched EastEnders. I swear to God, I realized anybody can make it in this country. This is amazing. So you don't have to be young and beautiful and 6 foot or whatsoever, you can make it. And I thought, oh, wow. And I thought, you can wear your hijab, you can be black, you can be whatever. I love this. I think this is the type of place that can really make it. And I think I love that sense of if you're very driven, you do whatever you want. And I think that someone say, I remember I heard that in a previous conversation, someone said that you're supposed, the new generation has about 5 different careers, so I'm on my 3rd career. So before I started, I used to work in oil and gas. So I would spend my time with men in their 50s, someone there, you know, in gray suits. And I didn't mind that. I was very comfortable being around that, but it allowed me to travel places I probably would have never been to. Saudi Arabia, where, you know, learn about different cultural differences. And the more I traveled, the more I got open in terms of I was very narrow-minded. I thought that the way I was thinking was the ultimate or the optimal way, but actually I needed to really explore the world to really understand how we can adapt to one another. And it's interesting because when I got, so when I left this job, I always loved fashion. And fashion for me was a way of expressing yourself and also helping my friends say, I'm going to date this guy. What am I supposed to wear? Say, don't wear that short skirt. Wear that beautiful, you know, little black dress so you don't sell all your best assets at the beginning. And for me, it was just a way of, you know, like, you know, the way you dress open doors. And then when I'm dressed like that, you know, I probably don't have the same conversation when I go to Asda in my tracksuit bottom, you know. So I understood the power of power dressing, and I used that, and I didn't know people were getting paid for it. And so, yes, I carried on. I started working with fashion brands and luxury brands. And I got tired of it because I wanted to do something that made a bit more of an impact. As much as I love having women who cry and say, I've never seen myself so beautiful. And I say, now, you know, and she could see herself in a different set of value. And I love that. And it's funny because my ex-boyfriend at the time, we're still good friends, was a plumber, you know, Scottish, half Nigerian. And every time I looked at him in the shower, I was like, you should do a video of you in the shower because you look amazing. And if this girl is crazy, I'm not going to do a shower to advertise my plumbing business of me in the shower. But what was interesting about this is that the fact that, you know, when I looked at his website, he would be advertising a boiler. And I said, why are you advertising a boiler? I said, that's what I do. He said to me, that's what I do. I said, but that's not what you sell. You sell the pleasure of being at home. And without knowing, I found myself into branding and marketing. And I self-taught myself in terms of understanding this space, and now I run an agency. And so when I was working with a number of entrepreneurs, always giving advice, pick a niche, be very clear in terms of who you want to work with, but I wasn't listening to my own advice. And then one day, I was on Twitter, I don't know if who's on Twitter, and it was a story of this little black girl who decided to create an app, a technology that would help kids who travel miles and miles away to go to school, help them find a way back home. You don't think about that, and wow. And I was thinking, I want to work with people who make a real scalable impact, and I chose technology. And when I entered technology, I realized, oh my gosh, I'm still outnumbered. And I was comfortable being outnumbered when I was in the oil and gas space because, it was easy for me to remember me because there's only one black girl in a room or there's only one woman in a room. But I thought, I want people to remember me for more than just my red suit, yes? I want people to remember because I'm good at what I do and I want to be around other women and I want to have conversation, also women about their journey, especially black women. So while running my agency, I decided, crazy idea to launch a community that will support black women in technology. And it's funny because I've always used diversity as a way, as a power, as an asset. My team is mainly dominated by many female-led and also from minority background. So I understood that if we want to be able to work with brands across the world, we need to understand the world and have people who can disagree. And, being French, we love to argue. You don't have to be right with me. I love the argument. And then we go for lunch. That's fine. That's what life is about, You don't hold grudge. And, when I started and I created Black Women in GTA, Black Women in Tech, it was just out of frustration. And I want you to think sometimes the best ideas hide behind frustration. And that's what I did. I realized that the space of the space that society has created for me was limited. And I've always been comfortable with challenging the status quo. It doesn't exist, I'm going to create it. There's no one like me in that space, I'm going to create it. There's no book about Black women's story, I'm going to create it. So for me, it's always about if it has not been done, maybe someone needs to do it. And quite often, not quite often, and a lot of people in the room, I've done in my space where I create something that was not done. But yes, so people give me many titles, but I think the one I love the most is enabler, and I take pleasure in seeing people achieve or seeing the best version of themselves, whatever it is for the business that I run, or what it is for the individuals that I work with. But I'm so glad of being here and telling you my journey, and I'm only halfway through. There's so much more.
So your many chapters. This is just a couple there. Amazing, wonderful. Thank you so much for everybody for sharing your stories. I think it's really inspiring to hear how people are going through. And they do say, in this journey to a 100-year lifespan, we're going to have multiple careers. So hearing what inspires you for change, particularly your remark about, a lot of this stuff comes from frustration as well, and not entirely, but sort of partly as a motivator is really, really fascinating. Varalakshmi, I wonder if I could come to you next. Do please tell us your story.
What inspiring stories from Wincie and Flavilla. It's hard to top that. So when I look at my journey, I've always sidestepped a bit throughout. So I did a degree in electrical engineering, and then I chose to work in software and data engineering space. So it was a bit of a sidestep already. And then I started working in the data space in India for a few years, moved to UK, and I was told I wouldn't get a job here because I didn't have any finance experience. Here I am working for Funding Circle, which is a fintech company. And then I joined, after a few years of experience in other companies, I joined Funding Circle as a senior data engineer. Then I went on maternity leave for a year. I came back. I have a 5-year-old son. I came back, and at that time, Funding Circle was looking to scale data teams, and I wanted in the journey, and I spoke to my manager. I asked about what are the opportunities, and I was able to initiate or lead the scaling of the teams with the offshore consultants. And then I sidestepped a bit more where the teams did not have much of a support from a product point of view. So I stepped into a technical product owner role, building strategy and vision for building data platforms and data engineering at Funding Circle. And that led me to my current role as head of data engineering, scale the teams again to now I have a team of 48 at Funding Circle. So that's my story.
Yeah.
And as part of that, I think I've also been quite passionate about diversity, and I've always been active in the employee-led groups that we have at Funding Circle, and been part of various events like Women of Silicon Roundabout and here.
Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed. What's fascinating is hearing the mix of, kind of within one organisation, different career pathways, and then without an organisation going sort of different careers all together in different areas that take you on different pathways too. Sarah, you've been listening sort of patiently at everybody else's stories. Love to hear yours too.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I ever set out to be in tech. I started off my career in sales and account management, really like talking to people and to clients, and kind of fell into it almost accidentally. I left my first role and moved into marketing, legal marketing at a law firm, thought I wanted to be a lawyer, I did not, and then became a trailing spouse, so actually followed my husband to get his MBA, and I needed to find a job. So I was doing a little bit of job hunting, and found this kind of small technology company, digital marketing agency, and actually specifically chose the role I was going to apply for based on which interview looked easier, because I didn't think that I was a technology person. I thought, no, I don't want to go through this huge interview process that I had that imposter syndrome that I was not quite going to be good at that. And so I ended up taking this interview, and they took a little bit of a punt on me because I had absolutely no SEO experience before I moved into that role. But I did have those soft skills, and someone mentioned that earlier this morning about you kind of can't teach those soft skills. But I can teach you SEO, but I can't teach you those soft skills. And that's exactly what they said to me when they hired me, was I can teach you the SEO bit. And it was tricky. I think it was definitely hard to get the first little bit moving into something that I had never learned or studied before, but very quickly caught on, and with that role ended up actually moving from the US to the UK to then start that department here in the UK for our company. So it really was a choice that led me to different country, to many different experiences, which I really appreciate. And then throughout those processes have been a part of Merkle, which has a lot of technology roots, and have been exposed to so many more things. I think it's kind of never too late to make that switch in your career. And I know my dad is one of my kind of big cheerleaders, and one of the things he said when I was deciding between jobs, he said, well, which one scares you the most? And I said, definitely that one. And he said, well, then that's the one you should do, because that's what you're going to learn the most from. So it's been a long journey. It's been very fun. But I have to say, moving here, starting kind of almost a mini business from scratch within a larger organization, I learned more in doing that than I learned in my whole career beforehand, and I kind of owe all of that to taking a little bit of a risk on moving into something I was not really sure that I was going to like, but turned out to love.
And I love that whole thing about, take on the job that scares you the most. I think is really, really fascinating. Because I wonder if we can delve a little deeper into that. Actually, these moments, these kind of catalytic moments when you sort of think, actually, I'm going to go and do something different. I need to think differently. I need to push myself. I'm going to take on something that's actually a bit scary as well. And I wonder if we could just explore the moment when let me do it this way. How did you identify the moment at which you knew you had to do something different? And, was that, for example, you could sort of slowly see it coming towards you and then you couldn't deny it? Or was it somebody outside just going, I don't think you've ever thought about that, but you'd be brilliant for that? Or was it a complete disastrous moment where it all fell apart and you went, I haven't got any other options? I'd love to hear, kind of your thoughts around that. Varalakshmi, can I come to you first? I'd love to hear, identifying that moment.
Yeah, so I think that was, when I think back, when I came from maternity leave, I was thinking what next, and that aligned with the scaling of data teams at Funding Circle, and I was talking to my manager a lot about what does it mean for me, and what could be the opportunities open for me. For me, it was more about what are the skills that I can learn that I cannot in my current role, like switching to this sidestepping and taking on the technical product owner role. I had the opportunity to learn skills like stakeholder management, strategic thinking, and that was the moment that I knew that I wanted to sidestep and look at what other opportunities are available. So I would say, for me, it aligned with the scaling of the teams and how and what I wanted to do as well next. Yeah.
That makes sense. Sarah, I'd love to hear your thoughts about that moment.
Yeah, I think there comes a point maybe in every role where you do stop learning or you're maybe not learning as much. And I think throughout some of my pivots, that's been a big reason as to why I've left. But I think I'm going to change your question a little bit because I was once in that situation. So it was kind of actually a few months before I decided to take the move here. And I was looking for a new role and someone suggested, oh, you'd be really good for this role. So I went through the interview process. I interviewed for it. And you know what? I would have been amazing at that role. It was a perfect fit for my skill set. I would have been great at it, but I was not excited about it at all. And my VP at the time, Matt, if you're watching, thank you. He called me and he said, Sarah, you do not have to take this job. Do not do something if you don't want to do it. I know that you've gone through all these, all of this hoops and they want you and you want, you would be great at it, but you do not have to take this job. It's your career, it's your decision. And the moment he said that, just the relief in my body, I could physically feel in my gut, I didn't want to take this job, but I felt that I had to kind of say, yes, I made you go through all this process, almost this people-pleasing mentality. And so I turned him down, and about a month later, I was on a call, and my directors were saying, we're just really struggling to find someone in the UK who can kind of lead this practice. And I was like, well, you guys, you know that I'm half British, right? I've got a British passport. And they were like, what? No, I didn't know that. And I wouldn't have had that opportunity had I not turned something down. So I think almost understanding that your career is your own pathway and that trust your gut because it really does tell you what you're actually feeling, but you can choose to say no, you can choose to say yes, you can choose to say no, but don't do it for someone else, do it for yourself.
And I thinking when you're talking there about some of the remarks from Helen earlier about the kind of steps of our career, and you go, well, if that is the next step, then I have to take it. But what you're saying is actually on paper that may well be the ideal step, but actually my soul's not, my heart's not in it, and actually being given permission to say you don't have to take it, which is really really interesting. And I wonder if we'd be sort of Wincie, I'd love to come to you next about. Sort of just kind of visualize, if you would, and share the moments when you reached a conclusion that you needed to think differently. Because we kind of go through these pathways of kind of critical thinking where we know how we're taught to do these things, but they don't always get us to the right place. And have there been moments where you've just gone, I need to rip up the rule book a bit and just think a bit laterally?
So I had been in audit for a long time doing investment management. I was an FD. I started looking after these big books, and actually I just started rotating around. They just started giving me more and more, and I was like, after a while, I'm just gonna be running the finances for the whole business, and does that actually resonate with me? Mm-hmm. And however, I had this uncomfortable feeling that I had no idea what I was gonna do after this, if I wasn't gonna do this. So, and being completely kind of open and transparent today, because I feel very inspired by everyone today, I happened to be at an event where I saw then one of the CEOs of our bank, for the retail bank, his name was Ross McEwen at the time, and he gave a talk about the customer and about how he wanted to change how the bank looked at customers and put it at the heart of all our decision making. And from then on, I don't want to say I fell in love, but I watched him speak and I said, oh my God, here is someone with clear leadership and vision and the ability to actually make this vision come true. I want to be a part of that. And I had no idea what it was and what journey I would go on. But I was lucky enough to meet him again at one of our buildings while he was having breakfast. And because he was new at the bank, not a lot of other people around the table knew who he was. But I said, Ross, I'm not trying to embarrass you, but you're my hero and I want to work for you. And he was just like, oh, okay, thank you. Crazy, right? Like this crazy woman, that's what he was thinking. And then everyone around me, I remember, they were like all part of this talent group and they were all speaking very sensible things. They were like, what do you think about the ATMs? Or how are we gonna deal with cash? And I was like, no, I don't wanna talk about that stuff. I just wanna talk about how I can work for you. Like, how do I can I just sit outside your office? Like, and I said, no. And I remember he even said this, he's like, no, Debs, who was his PA, he's like, Debs would kick you out if you just tried to do that. You need a real job first. I was like, then give me a job, give me a job. And then he says, okay, let's get you out of finance. And he was very kind, and he did mentoring and coaching sessions with me and introduced me to loads of people. And then that's where I landed at the MD of Digital. And I remember thinking, like, I don't know about this whole digital thing. This is so far removed. I just really want, if I work in digital, that means I don't get to sit outside his office, does it? You know, and I wasn't sure about it, but actually was one of the best moves I ever made. Because I just remember knowing that, okay, there's something in this. It's about the customer. I'm going to be part of this change. I want to be part of this movement. I'm going to just do it and find my way closer. And then in the meantime, I think Ross became CEO of the entire bank, all of that. And he was very kind and still supported me throughout all the years and giving me advice and mentoring throughout that journey. And I just, and I ended up landing in somewhere I completely did not expect. And it was definitely, and I think I had to suspend disbelief at the time. I remember very distinctly at the time, I thought that as a finance person that's been specializing in this for so long, that the only place I could ever possibly go into was something like business performance management or something that was sideways to what I was already doing. And very obvious. I definitely did not expect to end up in digital running transformation programs and then innovation programs for the bank.
And we were talking earlier about, you know, the importance of role modeling. And you know, from Ross's point of view, is like, therefore sort of being such a strong role model to inspire you to be at that breakfast is, well, I think that's proof positive, really. Flavilla, can I ask you the same question, which is, you know, when you reach the conclusion that you needed to think differently?
You know, it's interesting because I'm going to bounce back on what you just said, but I think cultivating the little crazy within you is also the secret sauce. Honestly, yeah, think about it. I literally just finished watching We Crash. I don't know who watched We Crash, but it was crazy. But look how far that crazy, okay, it was very crazy. But look how far that crazy took him. And when I think about my own, you know, journey, you know, starting thinking differently, and it falls within that little crazy is everything that you do. Like, when is the last time you had a conversation with, you know, someone else within the company? When's the last time you traveled to something that made you a bit uncomfortable? When you last time you put yourself in a situation where you were in front of a different culture? When is the last time you got yourself out of your normal? And I think when you start getting out of this comfortable moment, that's when the magic happened. And again, you know, like, I will tell you the reality of France 20 years ago. I don't know if it's still the same, but my aspiration was as low as I would be assistant manager. And for me, that was fine. And then I find myself in a different situation. And I'm like, wow, Black people are doing much better here. You know, maybe I should stay in this country. And again, it's because of the society, the bubble that I was operating in, gave me that sense that this is what my ambition, this is the limit I can achieve. And then from that point, I realized, wait a minute, there's a glass that's, you know, again, I had to break that glass ceiling in terms of there's all this preconceived idea of what women can achieve, what women are supposed to do, or men are supposed to do in all situations. Not saying that they are wrong, but I'm saying that it's for us sometimes to redefine what is right for us and building and cultivating that ambition. So really for me, you know, this is probably why I became obsessed with just traveling, and I've been lucky to be to a number of places and I love the different. I never say the bizarre, I say the different, because I don't believe that my way of, you know, viewing life or living my life is the correct way. It's just different from somebody else. And the more I put myself in a situation that makes me uncomfortable, I feed my creativity, I feed a new way of thinking. So ask yourself, when's the last time you did something crazy? And when you do something a bit crazy, you will see that magical part of your brain gets activated and you start thinking differently. And again, use that frustration, whatever you're going through, do not accept it, don't normalize the situation that you are in. Use that to us as a solution. I was talking to a friend yesterday, she's like to me, I'm doing some work with, I'm not going to say the name, big organization, and they're trying to belittle me. It's like, you can play the game until you're inside the house. Just, you know, be quiet a bit. When you're inside the house, you can help them change their thinking and so much more. But sometimes, those situations happen for a reason. If you think that magic or success happen when everything goes right, you got it wrong. You got, again, something you gotta be crazy. Go and speak to someone, I wanna do this. And a number of times, you set yourself like, I wanna achieve this. And I remember the first time I said to my boss, I wanna make that salary, and look at me like, huh? I was like, yeah, well, how do I get there? But setting them in his mindset, what I wanted to achieve, made me get there. So be a little crazy. I want to challenge you to be a little crazy and cultivate that curious mind all the time. And that's when you start creating new path into your brain to think differently.
Yeah, wonderful. Very inspiring. We've got about 5 minutes left on the panel because the time is rattling past. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask each of you a question, and I want to just come at this from slightly different points of view as well, so in order to enrich the conversations we go through. Sarah, I would like to come to you first of all, if I may, about, once you've identified the challenge, this question of confidence comes up a lot. And how do you have the confidence to take that first step?
It's a great question. I think a lot of it's around, having the belief in yourself, but having other people around you who believe in you as well. So, I think I'm very lucky to have an extremely supportive spouse who, is kind of my cheerleader, also my best colleague when we're working from home. But I have him. I've got mentors, sponsors, bosses, etc. And a mentorship circle, I think, is actually something that I have really valued in terms of almost my hype girls, right? When I'm gonna go do something that I say, okay, I really need to do this, or I really wanna get this. Can you talk me through how I prepare, or how I do this, or how I do that? And just making sure that then I, feel confident walking into the room, I think is a really important one around how you almost the self-thought that you have about what you're doing. I can do this. What is this? What is, coming to speaking in a conference like this? This is great. I can totally do that. It's no different than having a conversation online. It's just doing it, in person. So I think having that really supportive group around you, and if you're finding that someone is draining you of that, then maybe they're not supposed to be in that inner circle, and finding a way to kind of replace that with someone else as well.
I love the whole concept of having kind of a cheerleader, hype circle, as you call it. I love that. Well, I've heard a lot of people talk about personal boardrooms. Really, really important. But actually, can I just ask you, and we're looking for kind of, sort of 45-second answers, if you would. If there was one skill you'd advise the audience to take on, but in taking your next step, what would it be?
There are many, many skills, but since we have to pick one, I would say resilience. And what I mean by that is when we are changing direction, sidestepping, we feel anxious. And I had this big moment of, am I going to fail? And what if I fail? And I had to tell myself that's okay. And I can learn from it, I can talk about it, and probably teach others from it as well. So it's making that right decision of like, if you fail, that's fine, like just bounce back, take another direction, or go back to your comfortable space. And teaching yourself that it's okay to fail is something that is important.
Brilliant. Wonderful. Thank you for that. And Wincie, on reflection, would you have done anything differently? And you've got 30 seconds.
So, I don't think I would have done anything differently, except if I could talk to myself in this weird dimension, then I would probably tell me to just give myself a little bit more grace. To actually, that people have hired me and they love me for me, or if they don't, then they're just not a part of my life. Then, and actually I am good enough. And therefore, I think it's just digging into thinking about your strengths, who you are, what you stand for, and doubling down on that rather than necessarily trying to do things that go against what your values are.
Wonderful. Great. And to see us out, Flavilla, my question to you would be, any regrets?
Oh my God, I would have plenty. But I think they're part of life. I think regrets are either lessons that we're supposed to learn. If we go through life without making mistakes, you're not living your life, trust me. And, I've embraced all of them. And I think I've always, and I love, because looking back to the stories as an outside vessel, I think, oh my gosh, Flavilla, you were so stupid. But I was supposed to do that was part of that moment and what I was supposed to learn. And I would say you either win or you learn. So if I don't get what I want, I'm supposed to learn something from that situation.
We're all supposed to learn something from that situation. What a fantastic panel. Thank you all for sharing your individual stories, but also insights as well. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thank you. If you'd like to make your way off, that'd be brilliant. All right, very inspiring. Love it. Can I just say also, loving the bit about sort of harnessing your crazy. Those who hear at the beginning of the day, I mentioned about my career in stand-up comedy, which is actually ultimately the most terrifying thing you could ever do. But it has taught me so many skills in life, you would not believe it. So think about what is your crazy and go and do it. I love that. I love that.